You've always felt it, haven't you? That sense that something's off. Like the world everyone else sees, solid, fixed, separate, isn't quite the whole story. Growing up, maybe you felt things others didn't. Sensed connections, knew things before they happened, and when you tried to explain it, you were told you were too sensitive, too imaginative, that you needed to be more grounded in reality. But here's what nobody told you. You were right. Let me tell you something. That feeling of being dismissed, of having your intuition labeled as fantasy, it wasn't because you were wrong, it was because the people around you were operating with an incomplete map of reality. See, most of us grow up learning physics from the classical world. Billiard balls, cause and effect, separate objects bumping into each other in empty space, a universe that's mechanical, dead, where you're just one isolated thing among billions of other isolated things. And if you grew up in an environment where you felt powerless, where things happened to you that you couldn't control, where your voice didn't matter, where you learned that reality was something that happened to you, not with you, this classical view reinforced your deepest wound, the belief that you're separate, powerless, unable to influence what happens. But what if I told you that at the most fundamental level of reality, none of that is true? What if I told you that separation is an illusion, that the universe isn't mechanical but alive, that your consciousness isn't a passenger in reality, it's a participant? And what if I told you this isn't wishful thinking, spiritual bypassing, or New Age fantasy? What if I told you this is what quantum physics has been screaming at us for 100 years, and almost nobody wanted to listen? Here's the thing that gets me. You've been carrying this intuition your whole life, this sense that everything is connected, that consciousness matters, that reality is more fluid than it appears. And you've been told by science teachers, by skeptics, by well-meaning friends, that these are just comforting beliefs, pretty ideas with no basis in reality. But they were wrong, not because they were lying, but because they never went deep enough into what quantum physics actually reveals. Let me show you something that changed everything for me. In the 1920s, physicists discovered something so disturbing, so contrary to common sense that even Einstein refused to accept it. They discovered that at the quantum level, reality doesn't exist the way we think it does. Particles don't have definite positions until you look at them. They exist in a state of pure possibility, simultaneously everywhere and nowhere, until the moment of observation. And here's the kicker. The act of observation doesn't just reveal where the particle is. It actually creates the particle's location. Your consciousness, your attention, your focus, your observation collapses infinite possibilities into one concrete reality. This is called the observer effect, and it's not a metaphor, it's not an interpretation. It's what the experiments show again and again and again. Your intuition that consciousness shapes reality, science proved it in 1927. Let that sink in for a moment. Now I know what some of you are thinking. Okay, but that's particles, tiny things in labs. What does that have to do with my life, with my relationships, with my ability to change my circumstances? And that's exactly where most people stop. They learn about quantum weirdness, find it interesting, and then go back to living as if reality is still classical, still fixed, still separate. But here's what I want you to understand. You are made of these particles. Every atom in your body, every neuron firing in your brain, every cell that makes up your physical form, you are not separate from the quantum world. You are the quantum world, looking at itself. And if observation collapses possibilities at the quantum level, what does that mean for the reality you're observing every single day? We're going to go deep today, deeper than most quantum manifestation content goes. Because I'm not here to give you surface-level inspiration, I'm here to show you the actual science, weird, uncomfortable, reality-shattering science that proves you have more power than you were ever told. We're going to explore 3 quantum discoveries that completely change what it means to be human, what it means to be conscious, what it means to be connected, ready to go deeper. Let's start with the one that breaks everything. So here's the question that haunted physicists for decades. How does observation create reality? What is it about the act of looking that transforms a wave of possibility into a concrete particle? And more importantly, what does observation actually mean? Is it the human eye, the equipment, the consciousness behind it? Because here's where it gets weird, and I mean genuinely uncomfortably weird. Electrons, the building blocks of everything you see, touch, and are, don't behave like tiny balls flying through space. They have no size, no dimension. They're not little solar systems with particles orbiting. When you're not looking at them, they exist as waves spread out, in multiple places at once. Capable of doing things that solid objects absolutely cannot do, like going through two different holes at the same time, but the instant you observe them. The wave collapses, the electron becomes a particle, one location, one state, solid matter, real. Now let me give you an image that physicist Nick Herbert used, and trust me, this one stays with you. Imagine you're at a bowling alley. You roll a quantum bowling ball down the lane. When you watch it roll, it leaves a normal track, a straight line, exactly what you'd expect. But here's the thing. If you close your eyes, if you stop observing, the bowling ball doesn't stay a ball. It becomes a wave. And when you open your eyes again and look at the lane, you don't see a straight track. You see a wide serpentine pattern like a snake crawled down the lane. Because while you weren't looking, the ball existed in all possible paths simultaneously. It was here, there, everywhere at once, a wave of potential. Your observation forced it to choose, to collapse, to become one definite thing. And here's what Herbert said that stopped me cold. Humans can never experience the true texture of quantum reality, because everything we touch turns to matter. Read that again. Everything we touch turns to matter. You are like King Midas, but instead of gold, everything you observe becomes solid, fixed, real. The quantum world is always there, flowing, ambiguous, infinite in possibility, but the moment you turn your attention to it, it freezes, it solidifies, it becomes the reality you experience. You don't just observe reality, you create it. Let me tell you why this matters. Most people walk through life thinking they're powerless observers of a fixed reality, but quantum physics says the opposite. You're not a passive witness, you're an active participant. Your focus, your attention, your consciousness, they are the sculptors of reality. Not metaphorically, literally. At the quantum level, observation doesn't just reveal what's there, it determines what's there. That's not philosophy, that's physics. Okay, so if that didn't break your brain enough, let's go deeper. Because the observer effect is just the beginning. It tells us consciousness shapes reality, but it doesn't tell us how far that influence reaches. Does it stop at your body, your immediate environment, or does it extend further? Here's where quantum physics gets really uncomfortable, even for Einstein. In the 1930s, Einstein and two colleagues, Podolsky and Rosen, designed a thought experiment to prove quantum theory had to be incomplete. They called it the EPR paradox, and here's what it showed. If you create two particles from the same source, say two photons from the decay of a positronium atom, those particles remain connected, entangled, no matter how far apart you separate them, across the room, across the galaxy, across the universe. When you measure one, the other instantly responds instantly, not at the speed of light, faster. Now, Einstein hated this, absolutely hated it, because according to his theory of relativity, nothing can travel faster than light. Information, influence, cause, and effect, they all have a speed limit. But the EPR experiment suggested that somehow, these two particles were communicating instantaneously, no matter the distance. Einstein called it spooky action at a distance. And he said if this is what quantum theory predicts, then quantum theory must be wrong. There must be some hidden variable we're missing. Some deeper reality that explains how the particles know what the other is doing without faster-than-light communication. But here's the thing. They tested it, again and again, with more sophisticated equipment, more rigorous controls, and every single time the particles behaved exactly as quantum theory predicted. They were connected, instantaneously, non-locally. So what does that mean? Enter Niels Bohr, the physicist who debated Einstein for decades on the nature of reality. Bohr said something radical, something that most physicists didn't want to hear. He said the two particles aren't actually separate. Yes, they're physically distant, but at the quantum level, they're part of one indivisible system. You can't talk about them as independent entities. They're different expressions of a unified whole. Separation, Bohr argued, is an illusion created by our classical way of thinking. At the deepest level, everything is connected. Let me pause here, because I want you to really feel this. You know that sense you've always had, that somehow everything is connected? That there's no such thing as true isolation? That when something happens on one side of the world, it ripples through everything? You weren't imagining it. The EPR paradox proves it, scientifically, experimentally, undeniably. Separation is not the fundamental nature of reality. Connection is. And here's what that means for you. When you feel alone, when you feel like you're isolated, disconnected, unseen, that feeling is not reflecting quantum reality, it's reflecting classical conditioning. You were taught to see yourself as separate, as one isolated consciousness in a universe of separate things. But at the quantum level, that's not true. You are part of an indivisible system, a unified field, an interconnected web of consciousness and matter that cannot be divided. Your thoughts don't stay locked in your head. Your emotions don't stay confined to your body. Your energy doesn't stop at your skin. You are constantly entangled with everything around you. The people you think about, the outcomes you focus on, the reality you're observing. And just like those twin photons, when you shift your state, the field responds, not eventually. Not through some long chain of cause and effect, instantly, non-locally, across space and time. That's not mysticism, that's the EPR paradox. Now, here's where we need to talk about a physicist who took all of this further than almost anyone else. David Bohm. Bohm was a brilliant quantum theorist who worked with Einstein, and like Einstein, he was deeply uncomfortable with the mainstream interpretation of quantum mechanics. The idea that there's no deeper reality, that we just have to accept the weirdness and stop asking questions. Bohm couldn't do that. He kept digging, and in the 1950s, while studying plasma, a state of matter where electrons are stripped from atoms and move freely, he discovered something stunning. In plasma, electrons don't behave like individual particles bouncing around randomly. They act as a collective, a unified whole. Moving together in highly organized patterns, even though their individual motions look chaotic, they produce coherent, structured effects. It was like watching a flock of birds, or a school of fish, or something alive. Bohm noticed something else. When he introduced an impurity into the plasma, a foreign object, the electron C would respond. It would flow around the object, isolate it, eventually expel it, like an organism protecting itself from infection. The plasma would regenerate, reorganize, maintain its coherence. It wasn't following mechanistic laws, it was behaving like it had some form of intelligence, some inherent organizational capacity. And here's what Bohm wrote in his notes. He said he frequently had the impression that the electron C was alive. Not metaphorically alive, not acting as if it were alive. He genuinely felt he was witnessing something with its own form of awareness, its own ability to sense, respond, and self-organize. Now, mainstream physics didn't know what to do with this. Most physicists ignored it, called it poetic language. Said Bohm was reading too much into the data. But Bohm took it seriously, because if electrons, the fundamental building blocks of matter, can organize themselves into living systems, what does that say about the universe? What does it say about consciousness? What if consciousness isn't something that emerges only in complex brains? What if it's woven into the fabric of reality itself, present in some form at every level? What if the universe isn't a dead mechanical system that accidentally produced conscious beings? What if it's a living field and we're expressions of it? Think about what we've covered so far. Observation creates reality. That's the observer effect. Everything is connected instantaneously. That's the EPR paradox. And now, the electron C, the very substance of existence, behaves like it's alive. Do you see the pattern? The universe is not what we were told. It's not mechanical, not dead, not separate. It's conscious, connected, responsive, and you are not separate from it. You are it, experiencing itself through it. Okay, let's bring this all together. Because this isn't just abstract physics. This is your life. You are made of electrons, atoms, quantum fields, the same stuff that exhibits the observer effect, the same particles that remain entangled across space, the same electron sea that Bohm watched behaving like a living organism. Which means what? It means you are not separate from quantum reality. You are quantum reality. And all the rules that apply at the quantum level, they apply to you. Your consciousness isn't an accident. It's not some random byproduct of neurons firing. It's a fundamental feature of the universe expressing itself through you. Your ability to focus, to observe, to direct attention, that's not passive. It's the same mechanism that collapses quantum waves into particles, your sense of connection to others, to nature, to something larger than yourself. That's not imagination, it's quantum entanglement manifesting at the macro level, your intuition that the universe is alive, responsive, intelligent. That's not wishful thinking. It's what physicists like Bohm observed in the electron sea. So here's my question for you. If the quantum world operates this way, if observation creates, if connection is instant, if the field itself is alive, why do so many people fail to manifest the reality they want? Why does life still feel hard, stuck, limited? And here's where most quantum manifestation content gets it wrong. Most people hear about the observer effect and think, great, I'll just visualize what I want and observe it into existence. But then nothing happens, or worse, the opposite of what they want shows up, and they conclude quantum manifestation doesn't work, that it's all pseudoscience, that they must not be doing it right. But here's the truth. Nobody talks about. You are observing, all the time, every moment of every day. The question is not whether you're collapsing the wave, you are, constantly. The question is, what are you observing? Because here's what happens for most people. They consciously visualize success, abundance, love, but unconsciously, they're observing lack, fear, unworthiness. They're focused on what's missing, on what's wrong, on why it hasn't happened yet. And remember, observation doesn't just mean looking with your eyes. It means where your attention is. What you're focused on, what you're giving energy to, your focus, your attention, your emotion. They are the sculptors of reality, and if your dominant observation is fear, doubt, and lack, even if you're trying to visualize the opposite, guess what the quantum field is going to reflect back to you? Not because the universe is cruel, but because it's precise. It responds to the frequency you're actually broadcasting, not the one you wish you were broadcasting. And here's the part that trips people up. You can't just think your way into a new reality. You have to become it. Let me explain what I mean. Quantum physics talks about something called coherence. It's when waves are aligned, in sync, resonating at the same frequency. When you have coherence, you have power, clarity, signal. When you don't, you have noise, interference, mixed messages. Now apply this to your consciousness. If your thoughts are saying, I want abundance, but your emotions are screaming, I'm scared there won't be enough, and your body is holding the tension of scarcity, that's not coherence, that's noise. The quantum field doesn't respond to noise. It responds to signal, and signal happens when your thoughts, emotions, and body are aligned. When you're not just thinking about the reality you want, you're being it, feeling it, embodying it. This is why visualization alone doesn't work. It's not enough to picture the outcome. You have to collapse into the state of being that already has it. The version of you who is already living that reality. Because in the quantum field, all possibilities exist simultaneously. The version of you who has what you want, it's already there, as a potential, a wave. Your job isn't to create it from scratch. Your job is to observe it, to tune into that frequency, to become coherent with it. And the moment you do, the moment your entire being aligns with that reality, the wave collapses, not because you forced it, but because you matched it. Does that make sense? So the observer effect isn't about wishful thinking. It's about alignment. It's not about pretending everything is fine when it's not. It's about embodying the frequency of the reality you're choosing. And here's what I need you to understand. This isn't some special skill only certain people have. This is how reality works, for everyone all the time. The only question is whether you're doing it consciously or unconsciously. Let's make it conscious. I want to go back to where we started. That feeling of powerlessness, of being trapped in circumstances you couldn't control. For some of you, that started in childhood. You were in environments where your voice didn't matter, where things happened to you, where you learned that reality was something you had to endure, not shape, and you internalized a belief, a deep, unconscious belief. I am powerless, I can't change anything. Reality is fixed. But here's what I want you to see. That belief, it's not true. It never was. You were never powerless. You were always the observer. You were always collapsing possibilities into reality. The problem was nobody taught you how it worked. Nobody explained that your consciousness was participating in reality. You thought you were just reacting to a world that existed independently of you. So you observed from a state of fear, lack, and powerlessness. And the quantum field, precise, neutral, responsive, gave you exactly what you were observing. Not because you were broken, not because you deserved it, but because that's how the mechanism works. You were using the observer effect the whole time. You just didn't know you were doing it. And because you didn't know, you couldn't change it, but now you know. And that changes everything. Because the past doesn't determine the future. Classical cause and effect doesn't govern quantum reality. At the quantum level, all timelines exist simultaneously, right now. The version of you who breaks the pattern already exists, as a wave, as a possibility. Your job is to observe it into being. Here's what most people don't realize. Changing your reality doesn't mean fighting against what is. It means collapsing into what could be. Think about the electron. It exists as a wave, infinite possibilities, until observation collapses it into one actuality. You do the same thing every moment, but instead of consciously choosing which possibility to collapse, most people unconsciously collapse the same patterns over and over, the same fears, the same limitations, the same stories. Not because they want to, but because that's what they're observing. That's where their attention is. That's what they're coherent with. But you can shift that right now, not by denying what's in front of you, not by spiritual bypassing or toxic positivity, but by recognizing that what's in front of you is the result of past observations. And you are free in this moment to observe differently, to focus differently, to become coherent with a different frequency, to embody a different state. The quantum field doesn't care about your history. It doesn't care about your past failures. It doesn't care about your limiting beliefs. It only responds to what you're observing right now. And if you can shift your observation, not just intellectually, but emotionally, physically, energetically, the field will respond instantly, non-locally, across every area of your life. Because remember, you're not separate from the field. You're not trying to manipulate something external to you. You are the field, observing itself, collapsing itself, creating itself. So here's the radical truth. You are not a victim of reality. You are the observer of reality. You are not powerless. You are the mechanism through which infinite possibility becomes concrete actuality. You are not separate from the universe. You are the universe, localized in a body, experiencing itself. And every single moment you are collapsing quantum waves. You are entangled with everything. You are part of the living conscious field that Bohm witnessed in the electron sea. This is not metaphor. This is not motivation. This is physics. You are not trying to bend reality to your will. You are recognizing that your will, your focus, your observation, they are already bending reality. They always have been. The question is not whether you have power. The question is whether you're using it consciously. And the answer to that question determines everything: your relationships, your health, your wealth, your sense of purpose, all of it. So what are you going to observe? Now, before you think I'm saying you can quantum leap into a mansion tomorrow just by thinking about it, let me bring us back to the bowling ball, remember? When you're watching it, it's a ball rolling in a straight line. When you're not watching, it's a wave taking all possible paths. The shift happens when you stop trying to control the ball. When you stop gripping the outcome with white knuckles, and because here's the paradox, the moment you stop needing reality to be a certain way, the quantum field has space to deliver it. The moment you stop forcing, the wave can collapse naturally. The moment you surrender the how and just embody the what, the frequency, the state, the being, that's when things start to shift, not because you let go of your power, but because you let go of the interference. You stop creating noise. You start creating signal. And the universe, the living, conscious, responsive field, meets you there. Okay, we've talked about observation creating reality. We've talked about quantum entanglement connecting everything. We've talked about the electron sea being alive, but there's one more layer. And it's the one that goes deepest for most people. The one that heals the wound underneath all the other wounds. The feeling of being alone. Because you can understand intellectually that you're connected to the quantum field. You can believe it. You can even experience it in moments, but then you go back to your life. And you feel isolated, unseen, like you're carrying your struggles by yourself, like nobody really gets it. And that loneliness, that sense of separation, it's the most painful part, isn't it? It's not just about manifesting abundance or success. It's about feeling fundamentally disconnected from others, from the universe, from yourself. And here's what I want you to understand. That feeling is real. But the reason for it isn't what you think. You feel alone not because you are alone, but because you were conditioned to believe you are. In childhood, when you needed connection and didn't receive it, when your emotions were dismissed, your needs ignored, your presence unseen, your nervous system learned a story. I am separate. I am on my own. Nobody is coming. And that story became your default observation, the lens through which you experienced reality. But here's what the EPR paradox teaches us. At the quantum level, separation doesn't exist. You are not an isolated consciousness in a void, you are part of an indivisible system. A unified field, a web of entanglement that connects you to every other conscious being, every particle, every wave in existence. The loneliness you feel is not proof that you're alone. It's proof that you were taught to observe yourself as alone. But that observation can change. Right now, in this moment, you are entangled with the person sitting next to you, the person you're thinking about, the version of yourself you're becoming. You are connected to the electron sea that Bohm watched behaving like a living organism, to the quantum field that responds to your observation, to the unified whole that Bohr described when he said separation is an illusion. You have never been alone. You will never be alone, because at the deepest level of reality, there is no such thing as separation. There is only the one, expressing itself as the many, and you are not outside of that. You are it. You are the universe, experiencing itself through your eyes. So the next time you feel lonely, I want you to remember this. The feeling is real, honor it, but don't let it convince you of a lie. You are not separate, you are not isolated, you are not alone, you are entangled with everything, connected to the living field, part of the indivisible whole, and the more you observe from that truth, the more reality will reflect it back to you. Not someday, now. Look, we've covered a lot today. The observer effect, quantum entanglement, the living electron sea, the end of separation. But this is just episode 3 of Beyond Reality, and here's what you need to understand. Everything we've explored today, observation creating reality, instant connection across space, the living field, all of this is pointing to something even deeper. Something that most people aren't ready to hear. In Beyond Reality episode 4, we're going to talk about what lies beneath. The layer behind what you see, the place where everything you think is fixed, permanent, where all of that dissolves into something far more fluid, far more changeable. And I'm going to show you why the reality you're experiencing right now might not be what you think it is at all. If you're feeling a spark, if something in this resonated, if you're starting to question the limits you were taught, hit that subscribe button. Because this Beyond Reality series is just beginning. And I don't want you to miss what comes next. This isn't just content. This is a movement, a shift, a collective observation that reality is not what we were told, and you're part of it. Here's what I want you to do. Drop one word in the comments. Just one word. The word that captures your energy right now, your state, your realization. It could be connected. It could be alive. It could be confused or hopeful or ready. Whatever it is, share it. Because when you do, you're not just commenting on a video, you're collapsing a possibility into reality. You're making your observation known. You're participating in the field. And remember, you're entangled with everyone else watching this. Reading these comments, feeling these shifts. We're not separate individuals having isolated experiences. We're one field observing itself into new patterns. So share your word. Join the conversation. Be part of this. And I'll see you in Beyond Reality Episode 4, where we go to the place most quantum content never touches, the place where everything you think is real unfolds. Until then, keep observing, keep collapsing, keep creating. You've got this.